6, and we have another post-Hurricane Melissa briefing for you today. And today you're going to be getting a lot of information that is extremely useful. You are going to see that we have really moved into the recovery phase, and there are some very exciting things that we will be talking about today. We have many guests with us in the room. We have the Honorable Desmond McKenzie, our Minister of Local Government and Community Development, and he's the co-chair of the Cabinet Subcommittee responsible for the relief efforts. We also have on way the Honorable Darrell Vaz, Minister of Energy, Telecoms and Transport, and also Dr. the Honorable Christopher Tufton, Minister of Health and Wellness. We have ever faithful Senator Marlon Morgan here, who is always at our press briefing and so supportive to me in the Ministry of Education. We have permanent secretaries. I know particularly we have Dr. Kassan Troop in the best ministry that we have, and our Chief Education Officer, Terry and Thomas Gale, is here too. We also have Commander Alvin Gale, who's doing such a phenomenal job as Director General of the ODPEM. I know it's a difficult task, Commander. We're always glad to have you here. Dr. David Lowe, the Managing Director of the Development Bank of Jamaica, and other members of the DBJ team. We have Dr. Jacqueline Bisesa McKenzie, our Chief Medical Officer, also on way, including Dr. Karen Webster Carr, our National Epidemiologist. With us today also we have Dennis Zulu, the United Nations Resident Coordinator, and other representatives from different UN agencies. We have Ian Steen from PAHO. We have Brian Bogart from the World Food Program. We have Olga Iseza from UNICEF. And we have Natasha Greaves, the head of office of the IOM. We also have with us Mr. Brian Saunders, Senior General Manager for the Construction and Development Division at the National Housing Trust. Dwayne Burbick, our Assistant General Manager for Corporate Communications at the NHT. Members of staff from other government agencies, members of the media, Jamaicans watching at home and abroad, good morning to you again. So you hear the lineup this morning. They're all here. They're all going to be able to answer your questions. They have really important updates. But we're going to have to be very, very efficient with time today because it's many presentations. And so when you see me stand up, it means you need to wrap up. We need to leave enough time at the end to deal with questions. And there is, I know the ministers have to leave. There is a special cabinet meeting to deal with some financial matters, which are important to the relief effort, and that starts at 10, but we'll go much beyond 10 o'clock. But I do know that some of the ministers will have to leave beforehand to make that cabinet meeting. And so, without much ado, I'm going to have our first presenter, which is our head of ODPEM coming, Commander Alvin Gale. Good morning, Commander.
Good morning, Minister. Ministers, permanent secretaries, the media, Jamaica, good morning. Minister, I'll try to be efficient this morning. So we are now 27 days post the all clear given by the ODPEM, and the ODPEM continues to coordinate national, international aid support to the National Emergency Operations Center, which remains fully active. This collaborative framework brings together GOJ ministries, departments and agencies, the private sector, NGOs, community organizations, and all our international partners to ensure a coordinated, efficient, and comprehensive response to the disaster. It emphasizes resource sharing between stakeholders to minimize duplication whilst maximizing the effort. Today, the official number for confirmed fatalities directly attributed to Hurricane Melissa stands at 45. Our thoughts are with the families and communities grieving these loved ones. We are also providing necessary support to them during this difficult time. Today also, I wish to report that 16 persons remain missing. The JCF continues to work to find and reunite these Jamaicans with their families. To date, the JCF's efforts have reunited 18 persons with families. As we continue our efforts to ensure that aid is equitably distributed, we can report that this morning some 209,000 food packages have been delivered by the national system. Other relief supplies, including tarpaulins, shelter repair kits, hygiene kits, and water have also been distributed from the national system. Our reception, staging, onward movement, and integration operations, essentially our hub and spoke mechanism for distribution to transport supplies to their final distribution, this through the JDF with the support of the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, remains fully operational. Processes are also in place to ensure that this system can accommodate the distribution of recovery stores. As daily checks continue to guide where help is most needed, the ODPEM continues to close coordination with a multi-sectorial group in ensuring that aid is reaching our people fairly, quickly, and without waste. Yesterday, 25 November, some 52 communities were served, and today, some 140 communities will be served. The list of communities to be served today can be found on the Support Jamaica website. A number of shelters have over the past weeks been closing as persons continue to return to their communities. As of 10 p.m. last evening, 113 shelters remain open, accommodating some 1,441 persons. The parish of Westmoreland continues to see the highest numbers of shelterees. To date, with the multi-agency support, the Ministry of Labour and Social Security has been able to complete over 22,000 Jamaica disaster needs and impact assessments, primarily in the most affected parishes of Western Jamaica. A significant effort is now underway from a multi-sectorial committee to ensure that all the necessary assessments will be completed in the coming weeks. Jamaica has made some significant efforts and progress in restoring utilities. Today, we can report that 76% of the JPS network is operational, with some 165,000 customers remaining without service. Almost 82% of the National Water Commission customers have been restored, leaving some 102,000 customers without supply. In order to bring safe water to this population, the NWC and partners have established significant distribution sites across Jamaica and have also been trucking water into the most affected communities. The international community continues to be gracious in giving to Jamaica. Consolidated across the ODPEM monitored accounts, to date, some $1.86 million US and some 635 million Jamaican dollars have been donated to the recovery cause. As I close, I want to remind the public that if you require assistance or have critical information to share, please contact the ODPEM. Our teams are standing by. Contact numbers 876-906-7668, 876-967-1105. You can also make reports via the Support Jamaica website. In closing, I want to reiterate that the ODPEM is running a 24-hour operation. Every agency of government is in lockstep. The private sector and our international friends are by our side. We understand the challenges being faced at this time and acknowledge the challenges you have faced. Thank you, and may God bless Jamaica.
Very good on timing. Good start. All right. Now we're going to have an update from Minister Tufton. You heard him last week speaking on some medical-related issues post-hurricane that were expected. And so he's going to give you a further update this morning. Please welcome Dr. Christopher Tufton, our Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much. Okay, good morning, everyone. To my colleagues and to others who are here. So this is a fairly brief update. I want to just recognize in the audience my PAHO colleagues, Ian Stein, who is country head, he and his team, UNICEF also, because they have been a critical part of the health response. We continue to respond to the environmental issues in health as a result of the hurricane, and I'm restricting my comments today to that. We will give a more fulsome, updated response at our ministry's press briefing, if not tomorrow, on Friday, where we'll give a much longer version of the health response. So in summary, we have a plan, and that plan we believe is working. We started off with the emergency services in the immediate aftermath of the hurricane. As of this weekend, we will have 3 field hospitals set up, the last one being at Savlamar Hospital. Very sophisticated facilities that provide all the necessary services, from diagnostics to lab to pharmacy to inpatient care, operating theater, etc. We then moved into the primary facilities, where we have attempted to restore services, if not the infrastructure, of our health centers. 101 health centers have been impacted in the zone of the storm. We have about 325 health centers in total, approximately 101 impacted in various ways. 25 or so badly damaged, either totally damaged or extensively damaged. As of now, the assessment is being done, similarly so with the hospitals, and bringing those back to a point where the services can be provided, even if in a makeshift facility, whether it's a tier 1 tent type health center, or as said earlier, the field hospital. In addition to that, we have been attempting to ensure that our health staff, through our assessment, come back to normality in terms of their physical possession and their losses. Of course, giving them some emotional support also. And between those local workers and the teams that have come in, many teams from various NGOs, bilateral, multilateral partners, with the support of entities like PAHO, UNICEF, and others, we have been able to establish the personnel that is required to give the support for the services. And that, in the immediate aftermath of the storm, we believe is going well, in that persons, Jamaicans who need attention, are in fact getting attention. And we're very proud of the team and the work that they have been doing up to this point. The other point, and where I want to just spend a little time on, is the environmental threat. Now, we are sensitive to the concerns that have been raised in the public space by experts and non-experts alike, by either on the political hustings or by persons who are trained and who have sincere and genuine concerns about the announcements around leptospirosis, tetanus, and vector-borne related diseases. So we listen, and we accept, we assess, and we respond. I just want to reassure the country that we have always anticipated, as in preparation for dealing with a storm of this kind, one that we have never had before, as you know, that there, in the immediate aftermath of the storm, there would have been environmental risks. If you look at the history of these types of events, including the most recent one being what was the name of the one before? Beryl. The data would indicate that we had spikes in these environmental threats or diseases. Leptospirosis being a bacteria, of course, and dengue, a virus. So it's not genius to predict it, because the data and the historical data supports it, that this happens. What is important is that we prepare for it and we confront it. In the first instance, to prevent or certainly minimize, and in the second instance, to treat and to cure. Just to reassure those who may be concerned and have expressed those concerns, we started training to deal with the possibility of a lepto outbreak from before the storm, or just in the immediate aftermath of the storm, even before we could provide data that there was a spike. PAHO is here and they can validate that. We started doing lab training for testing, securing the testing equipment and the materials, sensitizing our doctors, our field operatives to look at or reminding them of symptoms so that they can diagnose before lab test results, and of course, reminding of treatment. In that department, we have no issues up to this point. The health team is properly seized with what they need to do, what to look for, and how to address. In addition to that, the health team in the field who are moving around looking at the consequences of the storm, the pileup of solid waste, which again is predictable, floodwaters, moving things from one place to the next. There are areas, low-lying areas that are going to be particularly risky. So we coordinate with NSWMA, local government, and others. That team is very seized with what needs to be done, and they are in the field. And, you know, one could argue that it could have been a lot worse if we were not mobilized and out there, and the public education, information, and support was not taking place. But, you know, we say to the public, without that assumption, that we are very comfortable and confident in terms of the approach that has been taken. We are confident in the team that is doing the work. And, you know, to assume the worst, to my mind, is to pour negativity on what, from my perspective, is a positive approach to a risk that we have to take. And while we listen, while we take note, I just want to reassure the public that we are doing what is necessary. So the flooding and the impact of the flooding, the moisture in the environment because of the flooding, in homes because of the roof loss, the solid waste which is now being cleaned up, we have supplied to our colleagues in solid waste through local government, the areas that are particularly risky based on our assessment. The work is now taking place to remove that solid waste, to clean up the natural environment of the sun is drying out, the areas that are moist, which gives greater breathing ground for the bacteria and for the rodents to move and to spread the bacteria. The dead carcasses are being addressed, whether naturally or otherwise, because we have provided the information as to how to deal with that. We're also providing information on how to deal with waste, given that toilets have non-functional in some instances in some of the communities, and all of that is taking place. We have also ensured that we have mobilized the team to be on the ground. We have made special appeals to bring more persons on, retired public health team members who have volunteered to engage the process. We have also, where outside help has been offered, ensure that persons are credentialed and are deployed where the need is greatest, working with our partners at PAHO and otherwise. And from that perspective, therefore, we think that the plan is working. We do anticipate that we will see a tapering off of the suspected and infected cases. We stand, as of the 22nd of November, on record 91 suspected, probable or confirmed cases of the disease, with 10 PCR confirmed cases, that is a testing, which is the gold standard of testing for this kind of illness. 11 deaths, 3 of which are confirmed leptospirosis deaths. And the indication from the team, this is the EPI team collecting the data from our centennial sites across the country, is that the increase in suspected or confirmed cases is taking place at a decreasing rate. Now, what's the ray of hope in that? Is that we are expecting, therefore, that it will taper off and then hopefully decline to what would be more in keeping with the average rates in the country. Now, it's still early days, and I don't want to go out on a limb and predict. It's not my job so to do. But I believe that the work on the ground is bearing fruits, and that we hopefully will see better days ahead, and we will keep you updated in the days and weeks to come. So that's it for me as it relates to leptospirosis. As I said, we'll give a more fulsome report on the status of health in the next day or two to deal with all the other issues. And there's a lot happening, and I want to just take the opportunity again to thank the team for the work and the support in so doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tufton. And we are, as you heard, there's going to be more details. There are other parts of the health discussion that need to be done in a little bit more detail, and he will treat with those later this week. And so up next, we have our Minister of JPS and everything, Minister Vaz, who is out there every day fighting for the people of Jamaica to get back light. And so, Minister Vaz, you are next up, and please welcome our Minister of Energy, Telecoms and Transportation.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure by now you would have either heard or seen the response to my statement in Parliament yesterday as it relates to the JPS restoration efforts as a result of Melissa. There was some question and answers after, which has caused some level of confusion, and I'm here this morning to basically just give a quick outline of exactly what has transpired to where we are today. So Jamaicans will recall that a license was issued, electricity license, in 2001. That license was renewed in 2016 and expires in 2027. The license requires that the government of Jamaica indicate by July 2025 the status of their decision as it relates to the license that expired in 2027. We responded in June 2025 as the government of Jamaica to indicate that we would not be renewing the license on the current terms, and that any license that was going to be issued would be on newly negotiated terms. Firstly, because we believe that the license was flawed in the first place, and secondly, a license that is 25 years old does not reflect the changes and the landscape in the energy sector. Important to note, if we did not respond by July 5th, 2025, the JPS would automatically get an extension of 10 years on the existing license. That would take you to 2037. So for all those who are saying that we have caused a problem because we gave them notice and they can't raise money with their license for 2 years, just imagine continuing for another 12 years under the same terms and conditions with the electricity price as where it is as the highest in this region. So I wanted to make that first statement to put everything in context. Secondly, we don't want to mix politics with Melissa. That's a position that I have taken and the government has taken. But I must state, and you can take from my statement now what I'm saying. This is the first time that the Andrew Holness-led Jamaica Labour Party government has gotten an opportunity to renegotiate a license from scratch. First time. And we gave a commitment to the Jamaican people then that we were going to protect the Jamaican people by making sure that a license or any license that was issued would have the Jamaican people's interest first and foremost. That would be the country and the consumers. So I made a commitment as minister with the backing of my government that the license would not be renewed on the current terms, and that a negotiating team would be put in place to start negotiations with whoever was interested in the possibility of running the utility company. JPS expressed an interest, and therefore that's all well and good. But it's clear that we have options. So the government of Jamaica, for the first time, had leverage because we have a license to issue on terms that we want to make sure are favorable. Here comes Melissa. Unfortunately, Melissa came and did catastrophic damage, not only to Jamaica landscape, but also the transmission and distribution lines of the Jamaica Public Service. Originally, first estimate was between 480 and 600 million US. Thankfully, that has been coming down nicely as assessments continue, and they are now at about 350 million US dollars. So that's great news. However, Melissa posed a problem because with a license with 2 years to go, the JPS would not be able to find or raise the capital on the capital market. And first thing that they said was that they would need a 15-year extension of the current license in order to be able to raise capital. They met with the multilaterals, who were very, very anxious to help on an emergency basis, but they too said that they needed between 8 and 10 years extension in order to protect their loan. So the minister here and the government and the cabinet were in a pickle for two reasons. One, an extension on the existing license, despite the fact that we had Melissa, would be a breach of faith in relation to the commitments that were given. Secondly, we would not have time to negotiate any amendments, even on an interim basis, to speed up the restoration and be able to speed up the restoration at the same time. Huge problem, because the fact of the matter, as was said in Parliament by all my colleagues yesterday, the people want light. The projection by the JPS currently, with their existing apparatus of 170 imported linesmen and equipment, takes us to April to May 2026. Can you imagine telling the people in the 5 parishes that they have to wait until mid-year next year to get light? Absolutely unacceptable. It's just not possible. It's as simple as that. So we had to find a solution. And the first solution of mixing an extension for funding was not palatable, neither for me as minister or for my government. So on Monday morning, after several different iterations and negotiations and proposals, we had a meeting with the Minister of Finance, the Financial Secretary, myself and the Permanent Secretary, President and CEO of JPS, and the Chairman. And I made it clear on the outset that we are not discussing an extension and funding. We are separating both. That was agreed. We were able to come out of that meeting and go to Cabinet to get an approval to loan the JPS $150 million US immediately, on the basis that that money would be used singularly for and advanced restoration, taking us from April or May next year to January to February 2026, which means that we'll be saving 3 to 4 months on restoration. How was the 150 picked out of a hat? They said they needed 300 linesmen to add to the 170 linesmen, and that would cost $75 million US a month for 150 for 2 months. They said, let's stop there. Let's deal with that and get the restoration program going, and then we continue discussions and negotiations in relation to what happens after that. So that is what Cabinet approved, a 5-year loan, which means that they have the option to pay it off in 2 years, which is when their license expires. If they are successful in the negotiation on our terms, they'll be able to raise the capital immediately to pay the government back their money. If they are not, and there's a new player that is coming to the table, the contract and the conditions of the license requires that the government buys the assets of JPS, which means that our $150 million will be set off with whatever that valuation is. And a valuation will be done based on the current status of JPS now, and also one if it comes the time where the assets have to be valued because the negotiations have broken down and JPS will not continue in 2027. So I want to make it very clear that the government has acted responsible and that the government and the taxpayers of Jamaica are secured. Worst case scenario is that we convert the $150 million into preferential shares in JPS if they're unable for whatever reason to repay. So it's covered on all angles. So I wanted to clear that from the mischief and the nuisance and the noise that's coming from sub-circles. I want to quote, and I'm asking you, especially Desmond, to just work with me, because it's very important to clear the noise and give the facts. I was posed a question yesterday by the leader of the opposition. And he asked as follows: so I'd like your assurance, Minister, that the $200 million will be coughed up by the JPS. That's the difference between the 350 and the $150 million that JPS is putting up. The $200 million that will be needed. Or JPS is going to draw down on whatever funding it can to raise from its creditors. I don't know how they plan to fund it, but we need to know it's funded before we put up our $150 million. What the leader of the opposition is saying is that we must not start the restoration immediately. We must allow the people to continue to suffer while we negotiate and try and find a way to find $200 additional million, which would set us back for restoration not by June, April or May, but probably 2 to 3 more months after that, by the time that negotiation is completed. So, as I said, that's a quote from the leader of opposition. And my response is, as Minister of Energy, as a Jamaican, as someone who has been to the hardest hit areas, seeing the people suffering without electricity, I cannot agree with withholding funds that will accelerate the restoration of the recovery process until JPS sources the other $200 million. It would be unfair and unjust to the people of St. James, Westmoreland, Hanover, Trelawney, St. Ann, and other less affected areas. The $150 million will be the difference between people getting back light as early as Christmas 2025 and latest end of January, February 26, as against June 2026. I also want to say that I made a miscalculation, and overnight I was able to get it corrected. There's an application, Brother Desmond, at the OUR for the last $50 million in the emergency fund. So the figure is no longer 200 million. Overnight, it's $150 million, making it that much easier. So I had a discussion with the OUR this morning. The documentation is in front of them, and based on all that has happened, I don't see how an approval will not be given for the disbursement of that $50 million. So that's great news. I'll answer two other issues that were raised. Member Paulwell mentioned about legislation being in place where people can't share electricity in disasters. I've asked my legal team, who have given me a preliminary. That only obtains if you are charging for it. So if you have a brother or a sister or a cousin or a next door neighbor who has light because they have a generator, and they are prepared to give you an extension cord and light up your house, please go ahead. And I encourage all who can do so to do so, as long as it is at no charge. And I don't think that there's any Jamaican that would charge in times like this, whether catastrophe or no catastrophe. And last but not least, I saw an interesting post this morning to say that what the Jamaican government has done in relation to the loan to JPS is common global practice. To name a few countries that have done it: Japan, Turkey, Pakistan, US, Grenada, Austria, granted public assistance loans to utility companies for disaster recovery. I'm not aligned with any political party. I just share objectivity. Sigh, this bias. So again, we have not reinvented the wheel. We have done what a responsible government ought to do. I will be getting, as soon as the Ministry of Finance has finalized the loan documents, they will be made public. And as soon as that is done, which I expect to be done in a matter of days, including this weekend, so that JPS can move to have those 300 linesmen here by the second week of December. Meaning not the linesmen, but the linesmen, the barge with all the equipment, everything, and work 18 hours a day to get as many places in the affected areas up for Christmas. Those would be the main townships, etc., that are possible. We will get from them a complete schedule of what they will do from the time those 300 linesmen arrive here, plus the 470, going right through, and everybody will get an update knowing which communities, which parishes will receive restoration when, similar to what we did at the end of Beryl. I close by saying that it is a priority. There's nothing bigger and more important in a restoration from a hurricane than electricity. You could build all the schools, you could spend billions of dollars. If you don't have stable electricity across your country, your productivity goes down, everything goes down, and you do not recover in the timeline that we need to recover. So again, I want to assure the Jamaican people that what we have done is the best that we could do in the circumstances that we are, and we will be monitoring with expertise assistance the numbers that have been given us in terms of the restoration and the restoration schedule. It's not money that we are giving out without the requisite transparency and accountability from the persons who are receiving that money. I will keep you updated, and I just urge you, listen to informed information, listen to the government, listen to me, listen to my colleague ministers, and remember that at all times, there are persons that do not have the best interests of the country and the people of Jamaica at heart. I leave you to be the judge. God bless Jamaica.
Thank you, Minister Vaz. And this is also a post-cabinet press briefing, and I should note that the JPS matter has come to every single cabinet meeting that we've had. And some weeks we've had 2 or 3 cabinet meetings, and it is something that we have deliberated about for endless hours. And the solution that we have now is one that the cabinet feels very strongly is actually in the interest of the people of Jamaica. In cabinet, whenever JPS comes, our question is, how many people will have light for Christmas? We keep asking that question. We keep saying you have to move more quickly. And they've said they can only move more quickly if they have the funding. And so the funding, through the efforts of Minister Vaz and the Ministry of Finance team, we've found a mechanism that does not harm the negotiations going forward. And this ensures that Jamaicans will get light. More people will have light for Christmas. That was our goal, and that's what Minister Vaz has been able to expertly give to the people of Jamaica. Thank you, Minister Vaz. And now we have Minister Mackenzie, our Minister of Local Government and Community Development, to update you on several things, including some cleanup activities.
Thank you, Minister Dixon, Minister Vaz. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, I want to touch on 3 areas of importance as it relates to local government. The head of ADPEM spoke about the number of shelters that are still in operation. We are hoping by the end of this week, based on the various initiatives that we have been putting in place, that we will see a significant reduction in the number of shelters and the number of persons occupying the shelters. We have already started to make those arrangements, and those arrangements already have been bearing some fruits, because at least 3 shelters, Sir G, has been closed, and those residents who occupy those facilities have gone back home, or we have found alternative arrangements. Now schools is expected to be open, and we don't want to delay the opening of schools. The major issue I have, Minister Dixon, is the shelter in Trelawney that occupies where the infirmary, which was totally destroyed, occupies a significant part of the school. Later on this afternoon, we'll be inspecting some prefabricated solutions that we intend to, over the next 2 weeks, to install in Trelawney that will house the almost 130 persons which are required to occupy the infirmary. Now, this is going to take some time, but in the meantime, Minister, while we continue to put those in motion, I'm going to beg of you again for some time. P.S., we're talking about the elderly now, the older generations, who we have to be careful how we move them. We have a similar situation in Westmoreland where one of the wings of the infirmary was totally destroyed, and another section of the drop-in facility was also destroyed. And again, we are going to be using the same solution that we will be instituting in Trelawney to relieve the situation in Westmoreland. Questions have been asked as to how are we treating the homeless population. We have seen the numbers increasing, but I want to assure the country that we have made provisions in the most critical parishes, St. Elizabeth, Hanover, Westmoreland, and St. James, to house the homeless population. We'll be transferring a lot of the homeless to some of the new facilities that we are going to be putting down, and that will be done on a temporary basis. Now I want to urge Jamaicans, because we notice the SDC did a survey on the homeless population, and we notice that a number of persons who are going out pretending that they are homeless are not homeless people. And they go out just to get the food. We do have a difficulty in providing support for those levels of persons. But when they go out, they are counted in the data. And therefore it creates a problem for us in providing adequately. So I want to urge persons, we have drop-in centers right across the country. If you want to get a meal, the drop-in centers are open. We have provided all the requisite resources to ensure that our drop-in facilities can provide for persons who are in need. So I would urge persons, if you want somewhere to hang out for the day, almost all the parishes have drop-in facilities. Every single parish in Jamaica have a drop-in facility since 2016. This administration have provided drop-in facilities. So persons can go to the drop-in facilities. You can get a meal, you can get something, clothing, bed, you can even get medical attention at the drop-in facilities. All of those facilities are up and running. The National Solid Waste Management Authority, Minister Tufton would have spoken about the collaboration that has started in dealing with the areas that were identified based on the assessment done by the Ministry of Health. And the team is working. But I want to say to Jamaicans that this part of the work poses a risk to those who are doing the collections. I'm going to ask for some patience. People bawling, they don't see them. And where them there with the trucks. Remember, we have to ensure that they have the adequate gears to go out there to collect this level of waste. It's not the normal commercial or residential waste we're talking about. And I'm saying to the country, treat these men and women with respect. They are doing a job that many Jamaicans would not do. They are committed to it. And they have been working 24 hours around the clock since the outbreak, and we are expanding the workload of the National Solid Waste Management Authority to ensure that those areas get the attention that is required to help to minimize any further outbreaks in the areas that have been affected. That does not say that we are not concentrating on any other areas, but the areas that have been outlined by the Ministry of Health are the areas that we are paying some attention to. The normal garbage collection still continues, and we have been ramping up the collections. We have brought on more private trucks in the system, so you will see much more activities. The Most Honorable Prime Minister yesterday in Parliament announced the National Cleanup Program. And this is the last matter I want to touch on before I take my seat, based on the instructions of Minister Dixon, that we must not be too long. The National Cleanup Exercise we intend to commence next week in Westmoreland. Now, this program, as outlined by the Prime Minister, will see the 16 most affected constituencies are taking part in this exercise, which we intend to have over a 2 to 3 fortnight period of cleaning. I want to make the point that we might not be able to accomplish all that we want in that period, but the necessary arrangements are in place if we have to go beyond. The call is being made for well-thinking Jamaicans to join in this exercise. So if you have a truck, a tractor, backhoe, any heavy-duty equipment that you have that can assist in the cause, you can make it available when we go to respective parishes. Now, the SDC, as the Prime Minister outlined, will be undertaking the working with the members of Parliament and the councillors to ensure that persons who are recommended, so each constituency will provide some 200 workers towards the program. I'm urging Jamaicans, even although a stipend to be paid to some, those who can give freely of their time, because this is a national issue. We're not ignoring the other parts of the island because the program will take in the entire country. But in the parishes that have been badly affected and based on the level of waste that has been generated, and for the recovery to start in the way that it should, this cleanup exercise will take us a step further to achieving the second objective of the government's program. So I want to urge my fellow Jamaicans. We have already made provisions to purchase trucks. Minister Vaz, I'm going to ask your assistance in asking the JPS to assist us with the wood chipping machines so that we can use those to cut away the trees. And we're going to be calling on the JPS because there are going to be areas where cleaning are going to be taking place where there are still falling GPS lines and poles, and we will need the GPS assistance. So Minister Vaz, I will talk to you after this. But let me say to the country that the government is working on all fronts. We are doing all that we can. You know, when I was mayor of Kingston, I was a part of a body of mayors, which they call themselves the World Conference of Mayors. And I had the privilege of being nominated as a vice president, and I, up until this day, still holds the position because they maintain that once you're a mayor, you hold that position for life. But a lot of the former mayors have been talking with me, and they have said that there are at least one mayor who serves, I think, during Katrina. And he has said to me that what we have been able to do in Jamaica, there are many cities in the States that have experienced Katrina that is still, up until today, trying to recover fully from the effects of Katrina. And I want to, not just to commend the government, which I'm a part of, but to commend the hard-working men and women who have gone out and toiled. There are firefighters today who have not gone home because they have nowhere to go because their homes have been totally destroyed. Tomorrow, we'll be spending the day at the Santa Cruz Infirmary to continue the cleanup and the repairs to that facility. At least 8 members of staff, all females, have lost their homes, have not gone home, and we want to be there to spend some time sharing with them, allowing them to understand that we respect and appreciate the efforts, the works that they have been doing for this country. And I urge Jamaicans during this period, let us be a little bit more considerate of the plight of many of those persons. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Again, you don't give me the opportunity to stand behind you. All right, I am going to now invite the Minister of Education to give an update. And it just turns out she's already up here. So I'm going to give you an update on education now. And I want to thank my permanent secretary who is here, Dr. Kassan Troop, and our acting CEO, Terry and Thomas Gale, for all the work that they have done. Today, 845 schools are operational, and that's really, really a great thing given what has happened in the West. I'm even more happy to tell you that in Region 4, and Region 4 has the schools that have had the most damage in terms of Westmoreland and Hanover and St. James. They're all in Region 4, and I'm so happy to tell you that because of the hard work of our principals and teachers, 24 of the 25 high schools in Region 4 are open for grades 11 to 13. So those are for our students who are doing CSEC and CAPE, 24 out of 25 in the most affected area. And that's phenomenal. That's a lot of really hard work that has gone into that. We're expecting that within the next 2 weeks, we'll be able to get all students back in. But it will be on a rotational, a shift basis, because we're looking at the parts of the school that we can use and using those parts. So everybody won't be in every day. So that's the interim solution. But our focus has been on bringing in those students who have external exams. And so that's been the priority. I also have some other important updates for you. We've started the work. We got approval at Cabinet for funding to repair the most badly damaged schools. And so we're starting the work, and the ministry and the National Education Trust, we're moving as quick as we can. And we've already started work on 3 schools, Monroe and Hampton, and also St. Elizabeth Technical High Schools. So those 3 schools' work have already started. What we're doing is prioritizing the high schools and those with boarding facilities. As you'd understand, where many of our students in the West need to board. And so we are focused on those schools. There's some additional schools that have facilities that haven't been used for boarding, and they are going to be fixing those facilities to take in more boarders from the West. So you have schools like Homewood Technical High School that's expanding their dorms so they can also assist even more. Last week I spoke about the host school program, which many of our schools in Kingston and St. Catherine, and also in Clarendon, Denby was a big one, and also Glenmuir, they have agreed. Glenmuir agreed to take in, I think it's 100 students from the West. And so we're supporting those children who need to move from the West into schools. But we're happy, though, that 24 of 25 schools, high schools, have opened for the exam cohorts. There's only one school, Minister Mackenzie, and you know we have to work on that one because it is still being used as a shelter. We've also have some new roof specifications. As we rebuild our schools, we're very serious about resilience. And so we have new roofing standards for schools, and all the work that will be done has to be done using those specifications, and we will be examining the work. There are many corporates who've reached out and want to support. Some of those include the Gore Family Foundation. They're adopting 9 schools. We have the Sandals Foundation. They have confirmed that they'll be supporting the repairs to Culloden Infant School, and they're looking at 3 other ones to do. We know foundations like the Digital Foundation have already committed to working on several of our schools. We encourage all of that as long as you do it within the standards. So work with us in the ministry. There are so many schools that need to be repaired. If you want to work on a school, we are here to support you and have it happen as quickly as possible. But all repairs have to be done to standard, because we cannot allow for our schools to, if there's another hurricane to be damaged significantly. And so we're very adamant about that, and we thank all of the corporate sponsors who are coming out to support the rebuilding of our schools. We have the list. If you want to rebuild a school, a small one, we'll do the big ones. We're not asking you to do the big ones. But the small schools, the infant departments, if you have an interest, please reach out to us and we'll work with you to make it happen. And so that's the update on schools, and I want to thank the teachers again and the principals. Up next, we have the head of UN operations here in Jamaica and in the wider Caribbean, Dennis Zulu. And we have to thank the UN. The UN was there at the very beginning. And I remember in Beryl, UN did fantastic work. And so I want to thank you for being here, Dennis, and to tell the entire country and the world what the UN entities are doing here in Jamaica. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning to you all. Pleasure to be here. Ministers, permanent secretaries, colleagues from the UN, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. In the wake of Hurricane Melissa's unprecedented impact, the United Nations has stood firmly with the government and people of Jamaica. Today, we mark another important milestone in our collective response, and I'm therefore pleased to confirm the approval of an extra $4 million from the United Nations Central Emergency Response Fund, CERF, to accelerate life-saving humanitarian activities across the hardest hit parishes. This $4 million allocation is a clear demonstration of the global solidarity with Jamaica at a time when the needs are immense. The fund exists precisely for these moments. It is the UN's Global Emergency Fund designed to enable rapid, impartial, and targeted assistance when crises strike. It pulls contributions from member states, the private sector, and individuals, allowing the United Nations to immediately deploy resources that save lives in these critical first days. Let me, at this juncture, also acknowledge the leadership of the government of Jamaica, especially the Most Honorable Prime Minister, the aligned ministries that we've been working with, ODPEM under Commander Gale, the Jamaican Defense Forces, local authorities, and all first responders. Your tireless work in the face of crisis has been nothing but short of extraordinary. Let me also acknowledge the work that we've been doing very closely with our regional colleagues from SIDIMA, led by Elizabeth Riley. Coordination, as you know, has been a critical part of the whole effort, and SIDIMA, working very closely with ODPEM and the United Nations, have benefited from this close collaboration. I also wish to extend appreciation to our partners, including our bilateral donors who have provided the financial resources, civil society, the private sector, and of course the media. And a special recognition goes on to all of you who have played a part in this role. Hurricane Melissa's devastation has been profound and far-reaching, and communities across Jamaica have endured the loss of lives, livelihoods, and essential services. From the very onset, the United Nations have been working very closely with the national authorities to meet urgent needs. Today,
finance institutions, we also extended our outreach and data gathering to different business associations. We started with the Small Business Association of Jamaica, Exporters Association. We also spoke to Chamber of Commerce and a number of other key partners in explaining to us what their memberships were facing in terms of the immediate effects after the storm. What we did after that was simply to understand where are the gaps in terms of access to finance, and where are the gaps in our ability to service support businesses that have a range of impact, from those that are immediately in the path of the storm and those that have indirect exposure to the storm based on the disruption of supply chains, etc. Thereafter, we developed a comprehensive plan connecting all of these complex gaps. Issues around eligibility, state of recovery, time to normalcy, a very complex, comprehensive look was taken. And while this initial launch does not adequately address every possible permutation or issue that could be faced by a business, we feel that it's robust enough to start, and we will evolve as we go along. We continue to also engage our ministerial partners who have been tremendous in helping us to set up this framework. The ministry, our ministry, Ministry of Economic Growth, first of all. Secondly, supported by the Ministry of Industry. And third, Ministry of Agriculture. And fourth, Ministry of Finance. And over the last 3 weeks, as I said, we were all working together in a collaborative way to see how best this product could be rolled out in a way that's meaningful and actually creates long-term sustainability for recovery. Now, the framework has 3 distinct product windows. The first, we have coined the name the refinance window. These are businesses that might have been indirectly affected, which already have credit facilities, and what we've done is to look at how we can engage in an assessment of terms, relax certain issues that can allow them to continue and have some breathing space. The second is what we refer to as the reboot window. And this is also what we have referenced as a light touch. You may have just some short-term needs, you have inventory to be replaced, you have some infrastructure damage that's not material to your ongoing operations, but you need to get back to where you were pre-storm. And the most important, and there are lots of issues around this particular window, which is the rebuild window, which is a longer phase engagement. And these are businesses that have pretty much been totally disrupted. So if you put things in context, you think of what happened during the pandemic. Business activity was disrupted, but infrastructure remained. It was the movement of people that was primarily the impact on what was happening in terms of servicing. In this particular situation, it's far worse. The complexity includes infrastructure as well as disruption to business. So we have to have a long-term plan in terms of how do we support resilience and to make sure that we're in a position to ensure that you're not going to be perfectly suited to withstand any catastrophe, but your ability to recover and reduce the impact going forward is what we're focused on in terms of this particular program. So each beneficiary will have, as it's displayed on the screen, between up to 20 to 50 million Jamaican dollars of access to each of these particular windows. And this will be advised through our partners, the AFIs, the MFIs, and we will then work with them in making sure that these terms are understood to the eligible candidates, and we'll work in terms of making sure they're timely and serviced. The next I'd like to share with you is where focus lies in terms of sectors. Through our consultations, we had a very simple grouping to at least get the program started because we did not want perfection to be the reason why we did not start with this rollout. So we have 4 clear verticals, and the first is agriculture. As we know, St. Elizabeth, our breadbasket, was severely impacted. So we've been working with the Ministry of Agriculture to make sure that we're working on their priorities in terms of what those businesses need in terms of support to regain good footing and to extend their ability to regain meaningful economic engagement. The second, manufacturing. And manufacturing is a two-sided situation because where you have agro-processors who have had losses to their main inputs locally, they may have been operating in another parish that wasn't affected immediately by the storm. So we have to engage in ways to facilitate their credit needs in terms of making sure that this disruption allows them to continue in a meaningful way. Distribution, which covers retail and wholesale. We've seen lots of small micro businesses affected in this space. And again, we want to be very targeted and very focused on making sure that these windows support them in their capacity to restore normalcy. Tourism, critical. Tourism has a number of areas that we have identified that we have immediate targeted responses for. People in the craft sector, those that are in attractions, and any other adjacent part of what we constitute as tourism and hospitality. We have a product that we've designed for you, and we'll be announcing more details as we go along. So what is also important is to understand why this matters. Why now, why this program, and why we feel so confident that this is one of many interventions that we're going to announce to the nation in terms of our response. The important thing to note is that we are committed to finding the best solution, all things considered, to make access to credit facilities easy, frictionless, and supported by our partners in the financial sector. The second is that we are also going to roll a grant program into our funding needs. And how this grant program is going to work is that we want to encourage innovation. We want to encourage things that can bring greater levels of resilience. There's going to be a lot of innovation because we've seen anywhere in the world where you have major impacts and fallout like this, you find that there are entrepreneurs who see an opportunity to do things better than what they were doing before. And we want to be able to give that support. They shouldn't have to pay or be penalized for innovation. So we want to make sure there's a grant element to that. So that will be wrapped in some of our offerings as we go forward. But the third and probably the most important in a post-climate event like this is where collateral has been impacted. Buildings that would be on offer for collateral, other sorts of assets are no longer available. And what we believe is important as a development bank is to use our ability to intervene by offering credit collateral support. And this collateral support will be wrapped into all these new facilities, up to 80% cash secured, that any bank that has an eligible beneficiary or candidate can have access to the funding and have the Development Bank of Jamaica's support for collateral enhancement to make sure that eligibility for this money is possible and doable. Now, in closing, I just want to say that we are going to continue to evolve. We're going to get new information that's going to be impactful. We're going to see new opportunities where we can make a difference. And we're also going to be informed by an ongoing engagement weekly with members of the public, the business community, our colleagues in other ministries, and all of the other economic, social, and important actors in a recovery like the one that we're faced with. So in closing, let me again say thank you to all the Jamaicans who have been part of this process. This was not an easy exercise. This was not an easy framework to produce, but it's because of this commitment that we as Jamaicans are committed to being what we are, resilient and determined to win at every level. And as your partner, through the Development Bank of Jamaica and the Government of Jamaica, we're here listening and we'll continue to make a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lowe, and thank you to the DBJ team. As you see, there are solutions being found across the entire government. We have some of the best public servants you'll find anywhere in the world, and they're working really hard to support across the many different areas. And you heard all of these new facilities that we will have. Please reach out to the DBJ or to your AFI, which is your bank that you usually deal with, and we will ensure that all who need the assistance are able to get assistance in getting back on their feet. Getting the business sector up is very important, and there's some other things happening, and Minister Aubin Hill is leading on that, and I'll also get him to come and update you on some of the work he too is doing to get our small businesses back on their feet. We now have something that a lot of Jamaicans are talking about. When you look on social media, you hear about it all the time, the new housing solutions. And so this is being led by the NHT, and the government is very clear on this. Anything we're doing, we're going to use the experts to evaluate. And so in terms of short-term housing, we have an NHT with significant expertise in the housing market. And so in determining what solutions we do, we've left it to the NHT. And so this morning, we're so happy to have the NHT with us. And it's going to be Dwayne Berbick, who is going to be doing the presentation this morning on the housing solutions, not temporary housing solutions, but the housing solutions that we have coming into the island. And so please welcome Dwayne Berbick from the National Housing Trust to tell you more about this.
Thank you very much, Minister Dixon, and a pleasant morning, ladies and gentlemen. A few weeks ago, Prime Minister Holness would have indicated that that's just nerves, that's okay. The NHT would be leading a set of initiatives that would be supporting Jamaicans at this particular time. They include a rapid housing deployment initiative, which looks at semi-permanent housing units that can get our Jamaicans within shelter in a medium term framework, and over long term would amend and lend themselves to some amount of flexibility as well for these recipients to build out that. In addition to that, we've also given consideration to a set of initiatives that we believe will give us a more short-term impact in terms of addressing the housing needs of Jamaicans at this time. And I'll take you through them. They include our peril insurance arrangements that we have for our existing mortgages, and also looking at loan and grant options as well that the NHD has implemented, not just for NHD mortgages now, but we've lent some amount of flexibility in terms of the eligibility criteria and in terms of who qualifies for these benefits. So we're extending it beyond just the NHD mortgager to look at homeowners in general, and as I'll share a little bit later, to look as well at immediate family members who may not be directly impacted, but they are in a position to lend some support to family members who are in the more heavily impacted areas. So I'll start with the Rapid Deployment Housing Initiative, and the NHD is now in the process of procuring the first 2,500 of what is, in its first instance, 5,000 semi-permanent housing units that we have done quite a bit of research in terms of looking at what is available in the market and what satisfies some of our technical specifications as it relates to building codes and construction, and also what satisfies requirements as it relates to safety and ability to withstand certain weather phenomena. We landed on an expanded polystyrene EPS prefab unit, and it lends itself for rapid on-site assembly. So that was one of the key considerations that we looked at. And it includes a steel frame, and it's supported by insulated panels, which nice way of saying they allow for cooling, so the units do not become excessively hot, and they're able to withstand certain degrees of weather resistance as it relates to earthquakes and, of course, hurricanes. Affordability, again, a key factor in terms of what we looked at in determining these units. So you'll see on our screen a floor plan of what it looks like. This first 2,500 that we're getting, they are 2-bedroom units, and they have supporting that bathrooms, kitchen, and living area. They're approximately 4,000 square feet, and you can see they are supported with windows. 400 square feet. I thought that's what I said, 400 square feet. And they have supporting windows, of course, for additional ventilation to support the cooling panels that they are already insulated with. And 2 metal doors, pre-wired, so facilitates easy installation, not much that is required thereafter for electrical support. The plugs and supporting electrical infrastructure, that's already there. And of course, I did indicate that they meet some of the technical specifications relating to earthquakes, fires, hurricanes, and of course, heat resistance. The NHD in this first phase of the Rapid Housing Deployment Initiative, we're looking at setting up these units on lands owned by the NHD. So our construction and development team, we're currently assessing the status of lands, especially in the St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Hanover areas, that belt. And we're looking at where we had plans for housing development, and there may already exist some amount of supporting infrastructure for sewage, for water already, to see how quickly we can finish that infrastructure and have those units set up, and then look at other lands that the NHD has and see how we can also roll out a program to put in the supporting infrastructure on those lands. So the NHD will be charged with making sure that the concrete foundations are in place, so installation is easier for the customer once they have acquired the unit. And I should point out that we're not just restricting this program to the lands that the NHD currently has, but we're also looking at acquiring additional lands in areas in that belt that can support us getting housing needs to our contributors, and I'll dare say it's not just the contributors of the NHT that would benefit from this initiative. While we will be able to sell some to individuals who satisfy our regular criteria, and I should say we are even looking at adjusting that criteria as well based on need, but we are also collaborating and partnering with other government agencies, especially those who are involved in social housing initiatives, to ensure that some of the units get to those agencies and get directly into the hands of the individuals who are in need. For our peril insurance arrangements, I'll share quickly on that the NHT's monthly mortgage payment, so the peril insurance arrangement extends to individuals who service their mortgage on a monthly basis with the NHT. So that monthly mortgage payment is not just principal and the interest that is paid, but we also have factored into that monthly payment as well life insurance and peril insurance. So in the event of a disaster, there is coverage for individuals to make a claim and to get back on their feet as quickly as possible. So we have in our portfolio just about approximately 130,000 mortgages. So if there are any individuals who service their mortgage with the NHT and are impacted, at this time they're able to put in a peril insurance claim. So we ask that you, of course, document the damage and document it properly. Take photographs before, after, if you have them, during, if you so happen to have the state of mind to have recorded some of the damage while it was taking place, and of course to get as well an estimate of what it will take to repair the unit and bring it back to its rightful habitable state. The supporting information in terms of other documents that would be required, that's on our website, nht.gov.jm. But the main thing I want to stress is that the documentation of the damage will be a key part. So when our assessors come, they are looking to match what they see on the ground with what you have put forward in your claim. And those claims are to be submitted by January 15, 2026. And I know there are some concerns about that timeline, but I should point out that the insurance coverage notes that claims, in fact, should be made within 45 days, I believe, after a disaster has happened, which would have brought us to December 12. But the NHT did some negotiations with our insurers and we got a 30-day extension. So now we're at the January 15, 2026 submission deadline. We are mindful, however, that some individuals are not back to any sense of normalcy just yet. And so we have mobilized our team. We have an NHT mobile unit that is now going out into our communities, into these affected areas, and are bringing the services directly to the people who are affected. So if you're not able to have internet or electricity and have difficulty reaching an NHT branch office to put in an application, we're happy to say we're bringing the service to you. We've optimized our mobile unit, which is a fancy way of saying we got a Starlink device and we put it in, and so we have good internet coverage when we go out there, not just for our team on the bus, but we are able to, lend some service to the people in the areas as well, that you can log in and let someone know that you're all right and while you're doing business with us. So the deadline to remember, January 15, 2026 for those claims. More information on our website. Visit an NHT branch office or look out for our mobile unit, which will be out on the road. I'll share a little on our hurricane relief loan, which is a special loan facility the NHT is making available to individuals who have been impacted by Hurricane Melissa. And it's a loan amount of $3.5 million that we're making available at an interest rate of 2%. And the loan tenure is up to 20 years or age 70 to repay, whichever comes first. One of the special things about this hurricane relief loan is that we're not just restricting it to the homeowners and the individuals who had their properties damaged. Given that incomes have also been affected in these areas, we have extended this facility to immediate family members, so children, siblings, parents wanting to help children, a wide cross-section of individuals can make an application for this loan facility on behalf of someone in a property that is affected. And that would not cause any variation in the terms that the loan allows. It's the same terms that would obtain as it relates to interest rate and time to repay. One of the other special things about this loan facility is that we're giving consideration to not just the immediate repair of the property, but how the homeowner may want to improve resilience. We hear the stories, the hurricanes will be more frequent and will be more intense. So if in preparation, let's say a homeowner wants to move from timber roofing and convert that to slab roofing, as part of the repair process, the NHT will allow the loan facility to go towards that as well. And another special thing, I know I said there are many special things about it, but the NHT is also giving a 6-month moratorium on this loan facility once it's processed, which means that you would not be making any loan payments in the first 6 months after the first disbursement of the loan has taken place. We have as well our disaster relief grant, which is a grant of $500,000 the NHT is making available per collateral, which means per house damaged. And that, again, we're demonstrating flexibility. It doesn't have to be the owner of the house that can apply for this. Immediate family members, again, can apply. And on that note of flexibility, we are also not just looking at homeowners in terms of those who are active mortgagors or contributors to the NHT. We do understand that quite a bit of our pensioners have been affected at this time as well. And so our pensioners are able to apply directly for this grant of $500,000 if they can. If they can't, and there's someone in the family who is a contributor, even if they're not living in the household, they can put in an application on their behalf. And it's $500,000 per collateral, so per property that is damaged. Some of the requirements for this relief grant include, again, much like our peril insurance claim, you must demonstrate that the property has been truly damaged from the hurricane. And so we want to see photographs, again, and estimates of repairs that have been received. And finally, I want to touch on the moratorium that the NHT is providing to our mortgagors at this time. So in the 7 most affected parishes, and that belt stretches from Manchester all the way around to St. Anne, once you are a mortgager in that parish, the NHT is giving you a 6-month break in those mortgage payments. Usually a moratorium just covers the principal, and things like interest and insurance will continue to accrue. The NHT this time around is putting a break on all components of the mortgage. So principal, interest, life insurance, and peril insurance. So no payments for all our mortgagors between November 1 and April next year. So first mortgage payment will be due May 1, and I'll dare say if May 1 comes and you're still not yet ready or in a position to start making those payments, we will extend that moratorium where necessary. For the individuals who are homeowners in other parishes, the other 7 parishes, if you too have had damage as a result of the hurricane, we are also providing moratorium. Those, though, are on a case-by-case basis. So individuals may put in an application to the NHT. You can visit our website. We've curated a space there, nht.gov.jm/recover, where you can find all the application forms, you can find the checklist of documents required, and we also have some frequently asked questions there as well that will support you in making your application. Thank you.
There is applause in the room, and they don't like to applaud in this room, but I think based on the DBJ presentation and the NHT presentation, we need to applaud. And for me, I'd like to note that both DBJ and NHT fall under the Prime Minister's portfolios. And so he has been working with both of these entities to get to some solutions that Jamaicans can feel good about. And I think everybody's going to feel good when you hear of the facilities, the billions of dollars that are being made available to our businesses that need to get back up on their feet. And when you hear the moratorium, if you're in certain parishes, you don't have to pay your mortgage because NHT is going to be putting in place this moratorium. In addition to that, there are the grants. There is the loan facility. And remember, the Prime Minister keeps talking about resilience. And so if you want to make your home more resilient and you're an NHT contributor, you have a facility now where you can get a loan at 2%. That's unheard of. That's basically 0%, given where inflation is. And so please take advantage of this. Please tell everybody, all those who are saying nothing's happening. That's not true. There's a lot of work happening, but the work had to be done in a very systematic way because it had to pass scrutiny. Those 2,500 homes that are coming in, a lot of work had to be done to identify who was best in the market. There are many players who came forward and said, we could provide, but NHT had to do the work to verify that these were going to be top quality solutions that Jamaicans would want. And you hear 400 square feet, and those are going to have the 2 bedrooms and the bathroom and the kitchen. But knowing our Jamaicans, Dwayne, you spoke it into being, they'll become 4,000 square feet very, very shortly. And we know Jamaicans like to build. And so these are great opportunities. And we now open up to questions from the media. Antoinette, who do we have first? Is it, okay, good, go ahead. Good morning.
Minister, how are you doing? All right, so
let me try to take notes.
All right, so first of all, I understand how busy the Prime Minister is. Clearly, he can't visit everywhere, but he has visited some areas. Can you explain why it took the PM 2 weeks to visit the worst affected communities in eastern Westmoreland, and then seemingly only because a bunch of Caribbean Prime Ministers were visiting? Second question, Commander Gale speaking at the PAAC last week when asked about relief work and how MPs didn't know when relief teams would be visiting their constituencies, explained the process and said what happens is that they contact the parish disaster coordinators before going in. Can you explain why relief teams wouldn't be notifying, not just notifying the relevant MPs, but also having them as an integral part of their relief team? And why is the relief effort seemingly so centralized and not community-based? 3 opposition leaders said yesterday at a presser that the opposition hasn't been invited to sit on any committees dealing with the relief work. Can you say if this is so? If it's not true, can you say what committees they've been invited to be on? And if it is true, why is it that that is the case? And fourthly, at this point, it seems clear the government doesn't have any intention of convening an independent oversight committee, despite your previous assurances at previous press briefings. Can you say why that is? And for clarity, the real-time audit being done by the Auditor General, very, very important, but can't be a substitute for that. Mm-hmm. And in relation to your own portfolio, Minister, obviously very important to get the schools back, but we've been getting complaints that some residents, especially in Westmoreland, feel they're being pressured. Got a report yesterday that teachers have been visiting and pressuring people to leave, and they feel when they don't feel they have somewhere safe to go to. Yeah. I'll stop there.
All right, thank you very much. That East Westmoreland question was the same exact question I got in the Senate on Friday by one of the opposition members. They said the same thing. Why didn't the Prime Minister go to East Westmoreland? Why it took him so long to go there? And I had to show in the Senate a video of the Prime Minister in Westmoreland 48 hours after. after the hurricane. So I'll do that one, and I know Minister Mackenzie is going to take some other ones. The opposition being on any committee, just noting that the Disaster Risk Council has the opposition on that. That is one. In terms of the new initiatives, I have said time and again that Cabinet is looking at using the national partnership as an oversight body. We've not finalized anything yet, but that's what we've been looking at. And the National Partnership Council has the opposition on it. We have 2 representatives from the opposition. There is Senator Lambert Brown, and there is also Anthony Hilton on that committee that also has the church and the private sector on there, and academia and other trade unions are also there. So that is what we are looking at, and I will confirm once we have a final submission in Cabinet on the disaster, on the new committee, NARA, and how that committee will be overseen. Once that is done, I will come back here and give you the final decision that has been taken. But no final decision has been taken, and we believe very much in the oversight element, that it has to go outside of government. I think the others were for you, Minister Mackenzie.
Yeah, just first of all, I think you answered the question about the...
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to something else. Okay.
Well, in relation to the question of the Prime Minister taking 2 weeks to visit the areas, the Prime Minister did yesterday explain that Jamaica don't have the luxury of a lot of helicopters. The Prime Minister did, within less than 48 hours, visited all the parishes that were affected. So the Prime Minister did, in fact, visited all the parishes that were affected within the first 48 hours, but a more extensive tour was done in Westmoreland because Westmoreland was the area that the hurricane entered the island. And what the Prime Minister did by taking the team of CARICOM leaders was something good, because the Prime Minister could have gone to St. Elizabeth, he could have gone to Hanover, but we went to Westmoreland. And no one should try to put anything, any motive at all whatsoever with where the Prime Minister have visited. Okay, the Prime Minister have visited all of the affected areas. In regards to the opposition's claim, the committee that was established is a subcommittee of Cabinet. So you have to be a member of the subcommittee of Cabinet to sit on that subcommittee. So this argument about not sitting on relief committees, the minister, my colleague have just outlined that based on the structure of the National Disaster Response Committee, the Prime Minister is the chairman, I am the deputy chairman, the leader of the opposition is a member of that committee. We do have meetings, and I recall having several meetings during burial that we invited the opposition spokesperson on local government. I don't want the impression to be given that the government is bypassing the opposition. There's a committee that was established in Parliament. The opposition refused to sit on that committee. The Prime Minister outlined the steps that we are taking to have an inclusive Jamaica in the process. We're just getting out of the hurricane. It is going to take some time to put the structures in place. And I would urge the media and other Jamaicans to respect the fact that the government has been working and things will come around. Everything can happen on the same day.
All right, in terms of schools, that is a concern, obviously, in terms of them being used as shelters. But we obviously have to always be on the side of compassion There are people who don't have anywhere to be. I don't think anyone will wake up and say, I want to be in a shelter. And so we understand that. And so the last week when the Prime Minister was here, he said that he had asked that the shelters be decommissioned. But that has to be done while we find alternative spaces for those individuals. So once Minister Mackenzie and Minister Purnell Charles say that they have a new facility for those individuals, they will be moved. And so as a Minister of Education, obviously we are usually saying to them, remember you need to do this, you have to move very quickly because you want to get schools back. But we understand that there are people that need to still be facilitated in those shelters, and so we're continuing to maintain that. I think those were all the questions, Antoinette. Next one.
Good morning. Yep.
The question as to why the relief teams aren't engaging with the MPs was answered.
Oh, okay. Commando? Relief teams, MPs, do you have a standard around the relief teams engaging? Okay, so he's dealing with the parish teams.
The system that exists does not allow the ADPEM to interact with the political directorate. In every parish, there's a parish development committee which is chaired
By the mayor.
by the mayors of each parish. The parish disaster coordinators work closely with the ADPEM, and everything that is done is filtered through the parish development committee. We are all members of parliament. In every parish is a part of those committees. And the ADPEM should not be interacting with the political directorate so anybody can accuse the organization of being political. So the organization deals directly with the structure that exists, and that is what has been done for years, and we will continue to do so.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Minister Mackenzie.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning and welcome back.
Nationwide news here. Question to Minister Vaz. Can you give any updates on the resumption of the rural school bus program, specifically in Hanover? We know one of the MPs in Hanover, the Western Hanover's MP, was asking for a resumption of the service.
Is that the school bus program that was opposed? Same one? Okay, all right, just checking.
So that question was raised to me in Parliament yesterday by the Member of Parliament for Hanover, for which I pass it on, and I received a response this morning to indicate that the Hanover school bus has been reactivated. It operated yesterday and it operated this morning. So I'll be passing that information on to the Member of Parliament. Mm-hmm. I have asked them to give me exactly how many school buses were rolled out in Hanover this morning, and I'm awaiting that answer. I'm just checking to see whether it has come in as yet. But to say that the school buses are operating in all parishes where schools are open and road access is available. The only places that are not is the areas that schools are still being used as shelters, and road access for the size buses make it unsafe to travel.
And an update on the fares for the students?
Suspended until December.
So 0.
So we had originally indicated that the fare structure would start November 1st. Hurricane hit October the 28th, and so we have moved that forward to December. We'll reassess it in January, but obviously it's not only the worst affected parishes that were affected. The entire country has been affected, and of course people's lives and livelihoods have been affected in different ways, but in education, as you would know, is very important, and therefore we have to facilitate and accommodate the children to be able to continue to go to school even in times of adversity.
Thank
Hanover is rolling.
Thank you, Minister. Oh, there's more.
Yeah, my second question would be to Commander Gale. In terms of the communities that were marooned, I know we've received an update on how they are now in terms of the status, but in terms of the people that are in those communities, now that they are no longer cut off as they once were, how is the recovery efforts going on in those places?
Our recovery efforts are ongoing right across all sectors. In terms of all communities, there's no special treatment towards those parts of the communities. The communities which remain flooded, there is some work ongoing from the Jamaica Fire Brigade and the JDF teams to treat with the water situations there, and in terms of the other environmental matters pertinent to the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
And in terms of the communities like Content or places in Hanover that have rising water levels, what's the response like there?
Well, there's nothing we can physically do about the rising waters. What is occurring now, I can tell you, is that right across all which are flooded, the waters have been gradually receding. So we're watching that as it goes down. But in terms of vector control mechanisms, those are being put in place in those communities.
All right, thank you. All right.
Good morning, everyone. Zara Burton, 18 Degrees North. There were 8 presenters, so I do have questions for 4 of the presenters. The first set of batch of questions is for ODPIM, Commander Gale. You mentioned that there were 16 people missing. I want to understand, I brought this up the last time, but why it is that ever so often we get a JCF message on Twitter about somebody missing, and yet we can't get a list of missing in this instance. 2, is it 360,000 people affected like you've said in the past, or is it 600-something thousand people affected in the past on the website of ODPIM right now that need aid? And the Prime Minister had said 900,000. So I wanted to clarify some of those figures in terms of how many people are we trying to reach systematically for aid distribution. Also, are you delivering aid on the weekends? And then 4 for you, how much has been deposited in the ODPIM accounts now? How much has been spent on aid? How much are you in control of as the head of ODPIM? Who controls the amount of funds that has been deposited in ODPIM? The second set of questions goes to Minister Vaz.
Can I attempt to answer the others first?
Oh.
So.
No. Can we just have all of them? Because remember, the ministers have to go to cabinet. So let's take all of them, and then we'll give you one set of answers.
Okay, Minister Vaz. You mentioned that JPS is saying 300 additional linesmen would cost $75 million each month. I just did some math. 470 linesmen, $75 million. That's US $159,574 per linesman, $25.5 million. If it's 300 linesmen, that's 250,000 US per lineman, $40 million per month. I want to understand if they had a schedule to come back online in April, May, prior to needing this cash. How is it that if they would have had maybe, I'm just assuming maybe everything in place in terms of infrastructure needed to come back online for that time, how is it that 300 linemen additional is costing this much money? So just a clarification on that. 2, there is an NWC situation where we've been dependent on JPS power to power water supply, and the Minister of overseeing NWC recently said that in terms of, to a question of a journalist, the NWC, yes, they're exploring renewable energy in some instances, but there is a concern that if NWC was to be powered by renewable energy completely, it would hurt JPS's bottom line, which would mean higher bills for us as customers. My question is, in the negotiations with JPS in order to renew their license, have you encountered or engaged them in any conversation about getting NWC, factoring NWC as not a customer anymore, and how they could plan for that so that people in disasters can continue to get water regardless of the power situation. And obviously that may have an impact on bills. I want to know if that has been assessed at this point. And lastly, on this $150 million investment that the government of Jamaica is making in JPS's restructuring, I get it, it's an investment in the economy. I just want to know, has there been a factoring done of cost to us as JPS customers in terms of light? How will that affect us? The next batch of questions, Mr. Burbick. Cost of the 2,500 containers, cost of the overall modular units, okay. I think the public calls them containers, but I will say with your language, modular units.
Can we get to the question?
Cost, I asked about the cost of the 2,500, the overall cost to the consumer who is about to purchase this when it comes in. Those were not mentioned, wondering about those figures. And then last batch of questions for you, Minister, is you had mentioned a spreadsheet of all the aid that's been received, and at some point it would be made available. I wanted to get a sense that overall spreadsheet now, because that $540 million that ODPEM had mentioned a couple weeks ago as having been deposited in ODPEM doesn't seem to reflect like the US $22 million that we got from the United States, or we were supposed to get from the United States in aid, because obviously that would be in the billions. And so I'm just wondering if you are going to be giving us the spreadsheet of all the aid that we've received from different aid agencies and also from different governments around the world.
All right, in terms of the aid one, I'll take that one very quickly. Remember that much of the aid that's committed by many of our multilaterals is not cash, it is in kind. And so all of that is recorded by ODPEM. ODPEM has their system of monitoring all of that, and at the appropriate time, ODPEM will share that. So ODPEM, since you're here, I'll let you take the questions on the missing people and some of the aid questions that were there.
So I'll start with the matter of the weekend. We do deliver on weekends. We deliver every day through our system. In terms of the cumulative sums that have been deposited into ODPEM accounts, I had mentioned earlier $1.68 million US and just about 635 million Jamaican dollars, and that's across all accounts. The procurement plan for these accounts is now being developed. We're doing that against the needs list. We're also looking at what persons are contributing otherwise in terms of what's on the ground, in terms of physical assets, and to move those. But we have been able to utilize from some other accounts, primarily the NDF, to treat with initial procurement of food items and water that has gone out. Your question concerning
so let's just clarify. None of the money that has been received has been spent as yet. So we've been using our government funds. Some additional funds were approved by Cabinet for ODPEM to use. Our donors have also provided food and so on. So none of that money has been spent. They're now going to figure out how to spend it.
Concerning the missing persons, I believe. I don't have the figure with me. I can give you at a later time.
He'll give you those info after.
Concerning the missing persons, I believe the same with the matter concerning the persons who are deceased. The police and the families are treating with those names as per their own protocols. So we will not be publishing these names. No.
All right, so let's see, there was a question about the additional linesmen and NWC water. I think it's really on the linesmen, Minister Vaz. Really what it was, they were going to need the money irrespective of whether or not it was fast forwarded. What we've done is to say we need it fast forwarded, and we are giving you the money to fast forward it. But Minister Vaz, you can answer.
So let me clarify. When you say 300 linesmen, the linesmen come with equipment and they come with materials. So when 300 linesmen come to Jamaica to assist the 170, they'll be coming with barges full of equipment very expensive equipment that has to be rented to make sure that they would be able to carry out the tasks that they have been mandated to do in the time that they have been made to do. So bottom line is, if you get 300 linesmen, they will need to rotate those linesmen because they would only work those linesmen for 18 hours a day for 30 days. So you'd have to bring in a new set of linesmen for the second 30 days, or you'd be using burnt out linesmen who are working at the minimum efficiency because obviously of the stress of the job that they are doing. So it is not 300 linesmen divided into 150 million US dollars. There's a lot more. What I can say, as I said yesterday in Parliament, once the arrangements have been finalized, it will be scrutinized to make sure that we are getting value for money, and we will also monitor the schedule that has been agreed on in terms of the restoration period and the areas. All of that will be made public, including the final loan arrangement documents and the terms and conditions of that. What we don't have is time. People want light.
All right, we have,
We are giving a loan, and that loan is fully secured with any situation that may arise, whether or not they get a new license or they don't get a new license. If they get a new license, which is 2 years is the expiry, they will be able to refinance themselves and pay us back the $150 million. If they don't, we are obligated to buy the assets of JPS, which means that our $150 million will come off of the table first. The shares will be our backup. In case of any eventuality, we would have preferred shares in JPS. So essentially, we would have control, not only of our licensing destiny, which is the most important to me, but also the fact that at the end of the day, the $150 is a loan to the JPS. Instead of them having to borrow from somewhere else or somebody else, which would take a much longer time, probably at a much higher interest rate, we are bridging that gap so that we can restore 2 to 3 months earlier. I just don't understand what's so difficult to understand and comprehend about a straightforward, smart, simple, compassionate, and responsible government action.
all right. All right, in relation to the bills.
The question was asked yesterday in relation to the impact of the hurricane. The 3 alternative energy sources that we use, Clarendon, Old Harbor, and Montego Bay. One was out of commission for 2 days, and one was out, and two are out for 3 days. So the impact of the change of fuel source would be minimal in relation to that fallout. And in relation to the loan, the JPS has to borrow money any which way. So this new money that they are borrowing from the government would probably be beneficiary to the customers based on the interest rates that will be negotiated, based on the fact that we are very mindful of the fact that any higher interest rates than normal interest rates would have an impact, obviously, with a pass-through to the customers. So the government and the Ministry of Finance, I'm sure, will take that into consideration and work out the best interest rate possible to minimize any impact on the customers and people of Jamaica.
All right.
Unfortunately for me, I'm not the line minister as yet for NWC, but I think in due course, Minister Samuel will be here, and I know that the Prime Minister made mention in one of his speeches about using alternative sources to make sure that in hurricanes, we were not dependent on JPS. And as a result of Beryl, I know that there's some main water supplies that have already gotten generators, and I know that there's a lot more that are in procurement to make sure that water can be in the pipes in the case of any disaster or catastrophe.
All right, I'm getting an SOS from Cabinet because we are an hour and 19 minutes late. Dwayne Burbick, you have to answer a question on the modular units. The teams are here to take your question. DBJ and NHT and others are here. The UN team is here. So if anybody has any additional questions, you can definitely get them answered.
Thank you, Minister. I'll just quickly point out that we are currently in the procurement process, so we do not have finalized numbers as yet, and that's procurement. We are currently assessing over 40 proposals for the modular units, and we also have to do a procurement exercise for the infrastructure works as well. So the final cost to the customer will include both components, so we do not want to prejudice that exercise at this stage by releasing our estimates that we are working with. Suffice to say, if affordability is a question, the customer would be able to benefit from the NHT's grants and subsidies that are made available in the regular course of acquiring a mortgage.
All right, thank you very much, Dwayne. I have to leave. I mean, is it one quick one? Okay, sure. I did. On aid, I did. That was the first one I answered.
Who was complaining of the shelter.
Okay.
Sorry, let me just repeat that. Since you answered me, I got communication
Sure.
from the residents in the shelter. It is a content primary school, which I think you mentioned is the one that isn't open yet. And what they said was that they were told to be in a particular part of the school, but that part was damaged.
Okay.
And they're knowing, I think it sounds to me like it's the admin block from what I've heard, and they're being told they have to leave, they're in distress, they have nowhere to go.
Well,
Can you comment on what you would say to the residents, because they're asking?
Well, what we have said is that we have to treat everybody as a human being. We have to treat them the way we'd want to be treated. If I were homeless, I would want to know that people would be accommodating to me. And we have said that we have to take care of those who are in the shelters. We cannot move them out until we have another facility. And that is what Minister Mackenzie and Minister Charles have been asked to do. Once there is an agreement in terms of where they will go, then they can decommission the school. But we can't decommission a school until those individuals who are there have somewhere to go. And that is the policy of the government, and the ministry will intervene too. The PS is here. She will be intervening with that school just to make sure that that is very much understood.
And that the residents aren't pressured because they feel distressed.
Yeah, and I can understand that would be very distressing, and we don't want to do that because so many people have lost everything. They've lost everything. And we have to be very caring about that, and preserving their dignity is at the center of everything. And so that should never happen, and we are going to ensure that it does not continue. All right, and so this has been a long meeting, and I've been abandoned by all the ministers, but it was very important because I think it does show that there's a lot of work that's happening. Government is more than the ministers. There are many agencies with very capable people who are working really hard to assist those who need the assistance, and so it is coming. Housing is coming. We have small business grants and loans for those who need it. And there are going to be many more announcements that will be made. I make sure that the announcements are real. Cabinet needs to have approved them before they come here because I'm not into the pie in the sky thing. And so I'm very happy that today we had some very concrete things that are on their way for those who've been so devastatingly affected by Hurricane Melissa. And so as we close, as we always do, we continue to pray for all of those who have been affected, and we continue to pray that God will bless this wonderful country we call Jamaica. Thank you all.